What's going on YouTube? So many were excited to see the Land Cruiser nameplate reimagined and reintroduced to the US market last year.
And now we've finally gotten to spend some real time with it, with this most affordable 1958 for the full week.
So is this a tough, rugged, and everyday livable SUV for you? Well, let's go ahead and find out. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about what is under the hood. So this is available with just the iForce Hybrid Max system. This is going to be a 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, plus your electric componentry for a total system power of 326 horsepower. That's going to be routed to the ground with an 8-speed automatic transmission, and our combined fuel economy is setting at 23 miles per gallon.
Now, of course, we're going to be putting that fuel economy figure to the test. We've been living with it for a full 7 days, so we'll discuss our real-world fuel economy. We're also going to be getting things like our signature sound level reading on our home state of Kentucky's roads.
But let's go ahead and close up the hood, because a big part of the appeal of the Land Cruiser has always been that tough design you get on the outside. Now, if you watched our first review of the Land Cruiser back at the press launch, you know that there's kind of two distinct looks for this model. This is the 1958, and what this version does is really kind of just harken back to the heritage of the Land Cruiser of the 50s and give you certain details that just go back to that kind of in a nostalgic way. First of all, up here in the front, you've got that classic grille finish. Most of the front here is going to be finished in just kind of a matte black that looks nice and rugged. The other big thing, though, of course, are your headlights. So if you remember, the standard version of the Land Cruiser is going to get a square headlight that's completely different, but this one comes with these circle headlights. Again, that has that nice heritage look. Your DRL is right around there. It is a projector LED for both low and high beam, and then over here on the side, you've got your turn signal indicators. All Land Cruisers will get LED fog lights as well. The upper versions, though, will get the rigid industry LED fog lights. Now let's talk a little bit, though, about the off-road capability. So first of all, this new generation of Land Cruiser is 4.4 inches narrower than our old version that we had here in the US. That's because this is now basically the Land Cruiser Prado that you have overseas. That's going to make it a little bit more maneuverable when you're off-road. Also, in terms of our ground clearance, we're looking at 8.7 inches. So that is pretty decent. It's not absolutely enormous, but that's going to be more than enough for most situations. And if you do hit something, we've got the available front skid plate. We also have an additional skid plate protecting our transmission. Now moving on to the rear design, of course, you continue to have a boxy look back here as well.
Yeah, I really like the way it looks. And let's go ahead and break down some of the features that you're going to find. Of course, we have a spoiler, we have a wiper as well. And then Drew's hopping inside because we're going to check out the taillight elements and see if all of the elements are LED for this Land Cruiser. So we do have an LED brake light portion that doubles as your turn signal indicator, LED reverse light as well, so all three elements are LED. A lot of rugged plastic going through here to give you that tough look. As far as the bumper, that's also going to be finished in that plastic design. And then underneath of here is your tow hitch. That's going to allow you to tow up to 6,000 pounds, which do note is less than the Lexus GX by about 2,000 pounds.
Now this week, the overall boxy design has certainly gotten a lot of attention. This is a very handsome looking SUV. However, the wheels, especially here on this 1958, are going to be a little bit more on the basic side. We have just a simple multi-spoke design with a gray finish. Also, surprisingly, all versions of this Land Cruiser do come standard with all season tires, not all terrain, even on this 1958, which is, of course, kind of the more basic, more rugged trim level. Now, in terms of your wheel arches, of course, they're going to be kind of squared off, finished in the matte black plastic, and our mirrors are also going to be finished in a matte black. They've got a really square look to them as well. You've got your turn signal indicator right here. Blind spot monitoring and heating are built in, and we also have power folding even on this model.
Now at the side of the Land Cruiser, you have a very boxy shape as you would expect. As far as overall vehicle length, it's a touch under 194 inches long. Now, as far as some of the design elements, I do want to point out you have black door handles. You're also going to have black window surrounds, and we have the optional roof rack up top, which is actually made of real metal and allows you to store things. And I think design-wise, it looks really good on this 1958 model. Now, as far as your safety systems are concerned, you're going to get every single one of those as standard equipment on all trim levels. But guys, let's go ahead and dive into the cabin and see what you're going to get in there. But first,
if you're new here, we're brothers, and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We may be young, but we love cars.
And we'd love for you to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family. Let's learn a lot, have some fun with all the latest cars.
Now let's go ahead and check out the interior. Here's your key fob. It's just kind of the basic Toyota key fob, no branding or anything on it. You do, of course, have a standard smart entry system, so you just reach behind the door handle, that will unlock the door, and fold the mirrors outward. Now, taking a look at the interior. So 1958 is going to be your most basic trim level of the Land Cruiser, and you will notice that as soon as you look inside. One of the biggest things that you will notice that distinguishes this trim level is the fact that we've got this cloth seat. It's got the kind of heritage cloth. It looks like, you know, back in the olden days of your Land Cruisers, where it's all kind of one just tone here. It's going to be kind of a charcoal color and has a little bit of a rougher feel to it, but the seat itself is very comfortable even on longer drives. Of course, it is manual adjusting as well. But let's go ahead and climb inside. Now, getting inside, we don't have any running boards on this model, but you do have the assist grip on the driver's side, so you can pull yourself up a little bit. It's not too high off the ground, though. And then shutting the door, let's go ahead and talk about our cabin materials. So, honestly, the best way to describe this is just to look at what is soft, not what is hard. So this right here on the top of the dashboard is going to be the only kind of soft material inside of the cabin. The 1958, like we said, is going to be your cheaper trim level. That does include things even like our armrest here that you're going to be using every single day is as hard as a rock. So I would have liked to see maybe a little bit of extra padding, even though I know that this is going for that more rugged and utilitarian vibe. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and fire it up. And now that it's fired up, let's get into some of the individual details. So beginning here with our gauge cluster, as you can see, we do have kind of a partially digital gauge cluster. That center section there of about 8 inches is going to be reconfigurable with different graphics. Right now we just have kind of the classic tachometer, and then you've got some of your other gauges out there on the edges. We do have rain sensing wipers here on this 1958, and you can get some upper end examples, which of course have premium features like a head-up display as well as a power adjusting steering wheel, although we just have the manual tilt and telescoping. This does have leather wrapping on it though. And then let's go ahead and talk about our interior storage. So thankfully this part of the console, this is actually going to be padded with a little bit of a leatherette material, and inside of here we've got a nice big storage compartment. This passes our donut test because there's 13 donuts inside, and we of course here at Car Confections like to put these donuts inside so we can check the volume. Anything above a dozen is a win, and this does pass that with 13. Now if you get the available cool box on your upper versions, that is going to restrict the size of this a little bit. Up in front of that you got a couple cup holders. We have a nice big space which could be a wireless phone charging pad, but it's not here on the 1958. Now coming to the shifter, we've got a nice big meaty shifter. It is going to just be a traditional style, so pull back for drive, bump to the left if you want to shift manually. There are no paddle shifters on the steering wheel though. And then heading into reverse, we have something that I think impacts the everyday livability of this truck, and that's the fact that the 1958 comes with this very, very basic backup camera. It's super grainy. It does not have active trajectory at all, and it just is kind of distorted in general when you're backing up because I think it's a little off-center. So overall, it just is kind of weird that this is a point that actually interferes with your everyday life with it. The one thing I do like, though, is that it still has parking sensors, both front and back. And then next to that, you have your electronic parking brake with your brake hold. And then right down through here, this is where you're going to see a lot of controls for off-road systems. So I'm not really going to talk about like what each one of these individually does. But as you can see, you just have a lot of different things that you can activate depending on what type of terrain you are engaging with. The most important ones are going to be these back here, so you can lock your center diff and lock your rear diff. Now you've got 3 USBs right there, and as far as our climate controls, we do have a standard dual zone automatic setup, nice physical controls through there. Thankfully, we also have 3-stage heated seats. Ventilated seats are available on upper end Land Cruisers, and then we also have a heated steering wheel located right over there. Now, as we move above, the next place we come to is our volume knob. Obviously, your upper end examples are going to have systems such as the available 14-speaker JBL sound system, but this 1958 comes with a very basic 6-speaker sound system, and let's go ahead and give that a sample. Overall, this sounds pretty much exactly like what you'd expect. It's not very many speakers for a large SUV. It's going to be more on the basic side of things. So if you're not a big audiophile, maybe you won't mind. But if you do like to really listen to music and jam out, I would definitely suggest moving up the trim structure and getting that JBL. All right, so let's go ahead and move into the main infotainment system. So here on the 1958, you're looking at an 8-inch infotainment display. 12.3-inch display is going to be included on the base version of the Land Cruiser, as well as that first edition, which is going to be obviously substantially larger. But in terms of the actual features, the main ones that most people care about, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, those are included on both the large display and the small display. Otherwise, this is just your standard Toyota system. It's their latest and greatest multimedia interface, and overall, easy to understand and pretty good performance on board. Moving up top here, even this base model does come with an auto-dimming mirror and 3 HomeLink universal remotes. As you can see, we don't have a sunroof, but one is going to be available on your upper end trim levels.
Let's dive into what you get in the rear seat area of this Land Cruiser 1958. Now, as far as the space figures, let's discuss that first. We're looking at about 37 inches of legroom and 39.4 inches of headroom. The headroom is really going to be the thing that you notice the most because it's really, really spacious in here. It feels open and airy. The legroom, though, is not fantastic. I'm 5'9" for reference, and this seat is adjusted to Drew, who is 5'8", and expect to find about 6 inches of additional knee room. So if you're, in the 6-foot range, I'd say you might have a little bit of trouble fitting back here in the back seats with a normal size adult. However, your feet can slide up underneath of the seat, and the seats themselves do recline quite a good distance. Now, of course, you have the bench seating configuration here on the Land Cruiser. You also have a fold-down armrest with 2 cup holders inside. The cup holders are big enough to fit a Stanley water bottle, so that's nice. As far as other features here in the center, I'm happy to see that all of your premium controls from more expensive models drop down to this 1958, so we have our own temperature adjustment back here, and we also have a 12-volt outlet and 2 USB ports, so that's all quite nice. As far as the door trim, as expected, it is hard touch from top to bottom. It's just a very hard door trim, so keep that in mind. Plenty of door storage, though, in the bottom. Now, walking up to the cargo department of the Land Cruiser, I want to point out a feature that a lot of you guys are going to like. You can push this button right there on the side, and that's going to actually pop the glass independent from the tailgate itself, which allows you to easily just throw stuff in without opening the tailgate up. I like that feature as well. Now, as far as the tailgate itself, it is going to be a manual one here on the 1958. Of course, you can get a power one if you prefer. Now, as far as things worth mentioning, before I even get into the cargo figures, I do want to point out that the Land Cruiser is not available with a third row. That was a change they made for this new generation model. No third row option at all. Now you will notice that we still do have some cup holders here on the side, as well as USB ports from, of course, the Lexus GX, which is this vehicle's sibling mate, does have a third row, so if you want a third row, you can get that model. And, USB ports, I guess, are useful for the second row passengers if they want to charge their phone by reaching back. Now, let's talk about cargo space, though. 38 cubic feet is what we're sitting at behind the second row of seats. And if I go up there and fold them down, we don't have an official figure just yet, but we do expect it to sit somewhere around the 90 cubic feet range. Now, I expect it to be a little bit less than that, so I'd maybe say like 87 is my official estimate. They do fold 60-40 split, and there are not any handles to do it back here, so I will have to go up there and do it manually. Now, as you can see, when you do fold those seats down, it doesn't fold exactly flat with the floor, so keep that in mind. As far as our cargo length, width, and height figures, that's something we do in all of our Car Confections reviews. Behind Drew's driving position, we are sitting at 77 inches of cargo length. From behind the second row, about 43 inches of length. As far as width, it is a quite wide tailgate, 48 inches wide, and height is also going to be very impressive in here, guys. 34 inches tall. The big SUVs have, the big height as well, and that's going to, of course, pay you dividends in that department. Up underneath of here, you have a tiny bit of space for a couple little belongings that you might be looking for, and we also have a power outlet on the side. Well, guys, here we are behind the wheel of the new Toyota Land Cruiser. In this test drive, we're going to be discussing quite a few different things, as you can see on the screen right now. We're also going to be getting things like our sound level reading, as promised earlier, at our, home state of Kentucky's roads, and we also will be discussing real-world fuel economy. But first, we want to go ahead and start with a hard acceleration.
Alright, that was 60 miles per hour with our iForce Max hybrid Land Cruiser. So like we mentioned at the spec dump, one of the kind of interesting things about the Land Cruiser is that it is one of Toyota's several hybrid exclusive models. You might not expect that to be the case, but it is true. Now with this being the iForce Max hybrid, that's kind of the critical thing. It's not as much focused on fuel economy as it is making quite a lot of power. So It uses a 2.4 liter turbo 4-cylinder with a very powerful electric motor, and your total system power is 326 horsepower, 465 pound-feet of torque, so a lot of torque in particular.
Yeah, I have to say, after living with this for a week, when you first get off the line, I think that's the most surprising part about it. That torque really pushes you back in your seat, as well as the electric components of this vehicle. It really does feel quick off the line, which is kind of rare for a big boxy truck like this. Normally those feel slow and sluggish. This is definitely not going to be the case here.
Right, and obviously this vehicle is platform mate. It's very closely related to the Lexus GX, and that comes exclusively right now with the twin-turbo V6. We also lived with that model, and comparing the power, if you hammer it fully to the ground, the GX is faster, but as far as driving every day, just around town, normally, this feels just as fast, especially off the line. Like Mason was saying, it's got enough torque from the electric motors and the engine just to kind of push you back in the seat. It feels really, really quick. Now, as far as the other element of the powertrain, that is an 8-speed automatic transmission. It's a good mate to this powertrain. Nice and smooth, pretty responsive as well. All of it actually works together very nicely. So obviously, it being a hybrid, it is going to shut down the engine when you're under low load. So even if you're at speed, it can occasionally go ahead and shut down the engine as you kind of just coast along. And obviously, when you're at a stop, it is going to shut down the engine.
Yeah, and of course, power is routed to the ground via a full-time four-wheel drive system. This is a very off-road capable vehicle at the end of the day. And speaking of off-roading, we're not going to be doing any off-roading in this video, particularly because we wanted to focus on the real world, like living with the Land Cruiser aspect of things. However, we have off-roaded this vehicle actually at the press event a couple months back in California. So if you want to go watch that, we do have that video live on the channel. That kind of focuses more on those off-roading bits. But diving back into our real-world impressions, let's talk about ride quality as well. When it comes to ride quality, I've been pretty impressed with the Land Cruiser. Of course, we're in the 1958 version, so the suspension does handle bumps quite nicely, even for the base model. And I also find these cloth seats to be quite comfortable. That's something that we're talking about, is just they may not be my favorite when it comes to design, but I do find them to be very comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you know, we've driven the GX with the 22s and the 20s.
Yeah. These
are 18s, and they just have regular all-season tires. They're not all-terrain. So actually that combination really makes this surprisingly comfortable on the road.
All right, and we're speeding up to 55. I'm going to go ahead and put fan speed on 1 and make sure that the rear climate is off as well. So let me go ahead and do that. All right. .3 decibels is what we're sitting at as our official sound level reading in this new Toyota Land Cruiser. We're in Kentucky finally, so that counts as official. And I don't have to sit here and guess how it compares to the rivals. I can go to carconfections.com/sound level readings, and on our website we posted all of the cars that we've tested on this channel. Now that does make it a pretty decently quiet cabin overall. It's going to be quieter than definitely some other off-roaders that you might be looking at, maybe like a Jeep Wrangler. As far as compared to the Lexus GX, though, it is going to be at least about a decibel louder, which I think is expected. The Lexus has more sound deadening, has thicker windows and whatnot. And I will point out that this Land Cruiser definitely has some engine noise that penetrates into the cabin. I'm not a huge fan of the four-cylinder noise making it in, and there is quite a bit of that if you're accelerating hard. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our real-world fuel economy. Before I get into that, though, I want to mention your EPA numbers. This thing is rated at 22, 25, 23 mpg combined by the EPA. Now, as far as our real-world figures, after living with this for the past week, we've been sitting at 19.6 mpg. I went ahead and took a picture of it so you can see it on the screen right now. 19.6 is definitely going to be lower than what the EPA is saying that it should be at. Most of those miles were driven, though, in the city, so that 22 figure would be more like the 19 that we've experienced here. But I am a little disappointed that it hasn't been getting at least what the EPA has estimated. So it really doesn't make the difference too much between that and the Lexus GX.
Yeah, but it is still definitely going to be better than that Lexus GX.
Yeah, that one's really bad.
Yeah, we were getting, in our week with that, quite poor fuel economy overall. Yeah. And then, of course, the previous generation, if you own one of these, that got like 14 miles a gallon. So, big improvement if you compare it against that.
And lastly, let's get into our airball and slam dunk, which is our least favorite and favorite element about the Land Cruiser. Drew, why don't you kick us off with the slam dunk?
We're going to say the slam dunk specifically of the 1958 is the way the 1958 looks. We just love the heritage design elements, and based on everyone we talked to this week, they also love it. It's just so handsome, rugged looking, but also like a little bit old school and a retro. Like, it just hits all the right marks, basically.
Yeah. On the airball side of things, you probably saw this one coming, but we are not a fan of the really cheap materials that they've used in here. I think it really affects the everyday livability of this vehicle, just like not having a padded armrest. Your elbow gets numb, you know, sitting in here if riding in the vehicle, and even on this top part you can't rest your arm out the window and things like that. It just really starts to affect your likeness of the vehicle when you're taking it on long road trips and stuff. So I understand this is focused on off-roading specifically, but they could have made this cabin a little bit more upscale and not really hindered that off-road focus.
Yeah, especially for the price, which you'll find out in just a moment.
Now, your warranty is going to be Toyota's Signature Warranty, which is a 3-year 36 basic, 5-year 60 powertrain. You do also get 2 years and 25,000 miles of complimentary maintenance. And let's talk pricing for the Land Cruiser. So for this 1958, this is the base model, and we are starting at a mid $50,000 price point, $55,950. Now, if you're going to want one like what we have today that has a few options on it, including the roof rack up top as well as the skid plates, we're going to be a touch under $60,000 for this 1958 model. Of course, it does elevate depending on what trim level you get. The first edition is going to be about $75,000. And if you're looking to buy a Land Cruiser or any new vehicle, we would encourage you to go to carconfections.com/newcarquotes. Now, the reason you do that is because we have a tool on our website that will connect you with local car dealers in your area to get you the best price. It's also going to give you access to invoice pricing information, which is a great tool for dealership negotiation. If you'd like to take advantage of that, link is provided in our video description, and we also have a pinned comment at the top of this video. All right, now it's time for us to discuss potential resale and reliability to make sure you are making a smart purchase. Now, first up, we'll talk about resale value. As an economics graduate myself, Drew and I took the time to develop what we think is a good estimate for this Toyota Land Cruiser's potential resale value. We estimate that after 5 years and 60,000 miles, it'll be worth 64.5% of its original MSRP, and after 10 years and 120,000 miles, 41.4%. Now, those are very good resale value percentages. As a matter of fact, it's in the top 3 for all vehicle brands, and the 10-year metric is exceptionally good.
Now, we've also done the same for reliability by developing the Combined Reliability Index. This takes into account several studies from trustworthy sources and combines them in a way that gives you a more holistic picture. In this regard, Toyota is rated as the #1 brand compared to all other vehicle makes.
Now, if you'd like to learn more about our resale values as well as our reliability information and our methodology, be sure to go to carconfections.com/resale and carconfections.com/reliability. Buying a new car is a big decision, so you want to make sure you're making a smart purchase, especially if you're cross-shopping between different vehicle brands. And guys, that's going to be where we leave off on this in-depth 7-day review of the all-new 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser. If you enjoyed watching this video or found it helpful in your purchasing decisions, we'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button down below. By subscribing, you're going to get us more vehicles like this where we can test them out for a full 7 days. By subscribing, you're telling the manufacturer that that's valuable to you. So please go ahead and subscribe down below if you're not already a part of our family. And if you are a part of our family, thank you so much for your continued support. We'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.